name's Kim Pritchard. I am currently Head of Biology here at Nlcs Jeju. I've been teaching, just to give a little bit of a background on me, I've been teaching biology now in secondary school education for the last 18 years. I've taught in the UK. That's where I based my training and experience with teaching various types of syllabi there, in the UK. And then I have taught for the last sort of 5 years out in the Middle East, in Qatar in particular. And now I am here in Jeju. Now what I'd like to do is actually sort of go through, in this particular presentation, I would like to go through the types of curriculum that we use here at this particular school. And I'd also like to go through the pre-planning that's involved with setting up a lesson. And in this particular lesson, I'm looking at enzymes. Now, first of all, what we've got here at NLCS is that we follow this particular curriculum, and that's the one that is set by Cambridge International Examination Group, CIE, that's generally what it's known as, and we follow the IGCSE Biology 0610. We teach it to years 9, 10 and 11 with the examinations, external examinations happening in year 11. And it takes about 130 hours. That's the guided number of hours, as stipulated by CIE, and we generally follow that. So you can see there on the presentation, it's for year 9s, it's 2 40-minute lessons, and then for year 10s and 11s, they've all got, 3 lots of 40-minute lessons each. Now, just to show what it looks like, what you're looking for on site, you will see that the syllabus that we follow has this particular cover. It's the 0610. That is really what can be called in the international school scene as the single biology. And then there's the other biology course, which is called double biology. Now, what that means is the double biology is taught, this particular this one here, this particular syllabus, is a mixture of physics, chemistry and biology being taught all at within a particular specification. Whereas the one over here that we teach here in NLCS, that is just strictly biology, and that's 1 GCSE, and this one here is effectively 2 GCSEs. Now that might seem like that's an imbalance there, but a student who is going to be wanting to specialise and get the single GCSEs in their science would also study chemistry and physics. So therefore they'd end up with 3 GCSEs, and this one here is an all-rounder, and that would earn you 2 GCSEs. Now here, just to sort of, I'd like to just show, how many topics there are that have to be covered in this particular, IGCSE of biology. And there's 21 topics. There's a lot. This is a really challenging course, and it's really quite extensive, as you can see, within these 21 topics, going from the classification right down to the human influence, on ecosystems and things. Now here, with teaching the IGCSE course, it's a very challenging course, like I said in the previous slide. It's quite a challenging course. And it's challenging for both the students, actually, quite rightly, but it's also really quite challenging for the teachers. Now, first for the students. Now, in lessons, generally speaking, you should always be thinking about not just the theory that's required to be learnt in those lessons, but also the practical skills that they're going to need to be able to cover that particular topic. And then, even though it says in the specification that they have to be able to investigate certain things or investigate that, it is really important to think about how to involve more for them to be able to understand that particular topic even better. Homework is essential. You will always have to set some form of homework because the course is so quite vast, It's a lot of topics. You saw that before. It's 21 topics. So you really have to be prepared to put in a bit of homework. And the other thing is study over the holiday breaks will be required. So when a student is, especially with external years, like with year 11 students, they will not only have to cover the topic, but they'll also have to be able to make sure that they cover the notes and working on their notes and making sure they've got a really good solid base for their notes, because they will need that for their preparation for revision. Now, it's a really good course, this IGCSE, the CIE IGCSE biology course, because it's a good little transition from going from quite a, what some year 11 students, and especially the year 9 and year 10 students, will find a little bit challenging for them. And it would be a very good course for them for when they transition to either IB, okay, whether it's higher level or standard level biology, or A-level biology. And teachers definitely rely on the fact that they know when a student has done a CIE IGCSE biology course that their students are well prepared, and especially if they've got an A to an A star in their IGCSE course. Now for teachers, okay, we don't get out of it lightly. We have to cover quite a lot of information, and we have to make sure that we cover it appropriately, in detail, and therefore adequately. And adequately really means that your student, your group of students who are going to be with you in that classroom for 2 to 3 years, depending on what the school's format is for teaching this particular course, you're going to have to make sure that they have got, that they've been able to cover every learning objective that's in that particular course. And so you also, because it's quite challenging in the amount of information that's covered, you also have to make sure that your assessments are varied, not just so that you are testing them for theory, but also so that you know that those students are able to communicate in English in quite detail, using the keywords, using the verbs that are appropriate, using the nouns and the adjectives that are appropriate for discussing, and making it very clear that they can understand a process or a topic. For example, making sure that they can communicate how blood flows through the heart. Okay, and it's not just simply that it goes into the heart and then out to the lungs. They have to describe how the blood comes through the vena cava, passed into the atrium, then past the valves, and then into the ventricle, and so on and so on. So they have to be able to explain how those valves shut and close in response to the increase or decrease of pressure. So as a teacher, you really need to think about the English language requirements. You need to think about the practical requirements, the investigation requirements, and you really need to think about, as well, making sure that they understand the theories. There are 71 different definitions in this course that these students have to know, okay? And they have to know it really well, precisely. Okay. Now, just to show you what the assessment is like here, there are 6 different variations of papers that can be taken for this particular course. And here at Nlcs, what we've covered, okay, are the ones on the right-hand side here. So I'll just highlight those in a minute. Now, here you've got paper 1, paper 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so as you can see it there. Now the first row of papers here, okay, are multiple choice papers, and so they are multiple choice questions, and they have about 40 of those in about 45 minutes. So, and that's 30% of their final mark. Then you've got your paper, your sort of theory papers, okay, and these are about 50% of that GCSE mark. So knowing the information and knowing the theory and the definitions and everything else like that is really, really quite important as a foundation. And then under here, the last row, we've got the practical aspects, so the investigation skills and the practical skills. Okay. Now what I'll do is I'll just look at these papers bit by bit, not too much detail, but just to show what we've chosen. Now here at NLCS, we've chosen the extended candidate column. Okay, this is the core candidate column. So students who you think are going to not get any higher than a C grade, these are the papers that you should be thinking about and entering your students into. Here, if you're looking at students to to achieve A stars, A's or B's, any grade above a C, then this is the column that you should be considering for your students, okay? Now, there is a little twist, there is a little difference, okay? Here, this is a practical test, so this is actually what's done inside the laboratory, okay, in your school. This one here is an alternative to a practical. You don't have to do the practical or anything in the laboratory at all, but they have to basically sit a test, an exam. Okay, and this is the examination for that. This is still done in the laboratory, in school, but under examination conditions. Okay, now this can sometimes, not many schools follow this, but some schools have the facilities, they have the equipment, they have the staffing, so they choose to do this particular practical because then it leads into CIE A-levels. And so it's all very neat and tidy for what that particular school wants. We don't follow A-levels, CIE A-levels. We take our students from IGCSE biology, then into IB, DB biology. And in that particular situation with that assessment, they do not have to sit and do practical examinations in school. So we follow, as you'll see in a minute, we follow this band, okay, this particular strip. So paper 2, multiple choice, extended. Extended candidates take paper 4, this is the theory, okay, short answer questions and structured questions, those sort of things. And then paper 6 here is the alternative to a practical, and what they have to do here is they have to show that they are able to draw tissue plan diagrams, cell diagrams, take measurements from those particular types of diagrams. They've got to be able to calculate magnification. They've got to be able to interpret data, plot that data accurately and appropriately in the type of graph. So quite a lot of those skills they would have to practice here in the practical examination as well. So it's a good measure, it's a good balance. But if you're restricted by facilities and by staffing levels or by equipment, this is a pretty good option. It's really quite a good one. Okay, so you've got here paper 2. It covers 30% of the full mark. Like I said before, this one's 50% of the total mark for IGCSE biology, and this one here is 20%. Okay, of the total mark of the IGCSE biology course. Now, a little bit more, I've covered this. This is a nice little summary of it, but there are 6 different papers you can choose from. You choose 3. You can't choose 1, you can't choose 2, you have to choose 3 to be able to get the full IGCSE paper. And like I've said before, a nice little summary, multiple choice, short answers, shows the application of knowledge, and alternative to practical, show all their skills and their investigative and practical skills. I'd like to show you this because this is, okay, an outline of only a small part, would you believe? If I showed you the whole thing, you wouldn't be able to see it, okay? And I would need another 10 slides after this to show the rest of the scheme of work, or the plan of our scheme of work for the rest of, like year 9, for year 10, and for year 11, okay? And I'm not joking, it would be another 10 slides. But I haven't done that. So I've shown you, okay, part of it. And in this particular school, other schools will have different scheme of work plans, okay? And mostly, and it's absolutely essential, but you will find in all schools there will be some form of a yearly plan, and you have to stick to that yearly plan, even though it's really quite fast, it's really challenging, like I said before, and also it's really very detailed. So you can see here 1.1, 1.2, that's the beginning, that's what we start with in year 9s, okay, with classification and characteristics of organisms. And then that goes all the way through to biological molecules in year 9, and then we start year 10s with enzymes, okay, and then follow it through in sequence, in chronological order, okay. And then sometimes it varies a little bit once we get to year 11, because what we want to do is make sure that we've covered really complex topics here in year 10, so then we can scaffold it and build up on it when we get to year 11, okay? And So I've got this bit here, and it also shows the topic that I'm going to sort of, use as an example in this particular presentation. And I'm going to look at enzymes. Now, it's in lots of different sections, and I'm going to look at 5.1, and it's an introduction. Even though it says here enzyme definitions and actions, specificity and optimum pH and temperature, even though it says that, you have to keep in mind your class and the type of students that you've got in front of you and what their English language abilities are. You've got to also think about, their academic abilities as well. Okay. Now, so like I said, I've shown you this particular slide here because this is where we're going to sort of lead into for this particular presentation. So let's have a think about what we need to consider before planning a lesson using this particular type of specification. Now, you really have to think quite a lot of things, okay, at first. Even though you've got your scheme of work and you've got that all planned and you have to follow that, again, let's think about it. You've got to think about your topic. Is it an easy topic? Is it a boring topic? Is it an exciting topic? Do you like this topic? Do you not like this topic? Okay? And that's going to influence how you deliver that particular lesson to your students. Now, the nature of the lesson, is it a practical one? Is it a theory one? Okay? In this particular situation, we're going to look at a theory one. Okay? Next one, learning objective. So what is it that you want your students to learn? You have to be really precise about that. You can't be too vague. You really need to be precise because you need your students confident, and they've got to be in. When they're confident, they're happy in themselves and they will take on anything that you deliver to them, okay? Learning outcomes, what are the students expected to be skilled in at the end of the lesson? What's their presentation of work going to be like? Because their learning outcomes are linked to how their work is going to be presented. And it doesn't always have to be written down. It can be through communication, it could be through action, it could be through a practical, all those sort of things. So you've got to think about what you want them to be able to do. And then again, you've got other aspects. So here in Nlcs, we're looking at scholarship, we're looking at pupils thinking further ahead beyond, okay, the scheme of work, and indeed the curriculum that you deliver them. Now, not all students can cope with that, so you have to be really careful about how you deliver your particular topic and the nature of your lesson to make sure that your students are confident and they're happy with learning what you're going to put in front of them. Metacognition is a really interesting topic. That's something else, that's a completely different session. That's something else that's really amazing. It's all linked with the new science of cognitive science and how students retain information, how they it's not so much memorization, it's away from memorization, it's not to do with performance, it's how they can recall, okay, it's not the same as memorization, but how they can recall it and link that information to lots of different topics. Really exciting area. If you're interested in metacognition, go in and have a look at it and think about how you can make your students think about learning. It's a really, really interesting topic. Now, lesson plan. Now, this varies from school to school. I've worked in at least 5 different schools and I have used at least 7 different lesson plans because it changes not just within the school, but it also changes with different requirements within that school. Now, like I said, that depends. Schools focus on the main aims. I'm going to use the Nlcs, okay, lesson plan template. You will actually come up with a different lesson plan template, which will have more information that's required from you. And it also depends on the department's focus and aims as well. And again, that varies. So be flexible. Be ready to adapt what you're going to use in lots of different scenarios, in lots of different schools, okay? But the main aim is to be sure that you know what your students want to cover and that you know what they are going to be able to produce at the end of it. Now here, I have to consider this. Any of the staff in my department have to also consider this. And these are the principles, and this is what's perpetuated here at Nlcs. We're looking at not just a teacher that turns up and sort of takes a register and delivers the theory. We're looking at teachers who show that they really love the subject. We're looking at teachers who have got really high expectations, like I said, scholarship, you know, like really wanting to find out more about that particular topic. And we're looking at, you know, making sure that you've got a firm but fair, a firm but confidence instilling sort of relationship with a dynamic with your students in that classroom. And then also you've got to be able to get them to think about how to learn in lots of different ways. So you have to present quite a lot of different strategies for the students to not only just sort of receive but also to give, okay, in that environment. And there's our student outcomes. You know, they've got to be engaged and excited about it. Not every student's going to be excited and engaged at every given moment of time, but if they will want to be, if you are, if you're really, really keen on this subject. And if you're not keen, find out a way to make it really interesting, because there's always something a person will have that they will find interesting to bring to a subject that they never thought they could find interesting. Your students, they've got to be active, they've got to be thinking, they've got to be doing, they've got to be talking, they've got to be doing all those sort of things. So you've got to think about how you're going to get them to do that in your lesson. And your students, you've got to be firm and fair, like I said before, but you've also got to give credit where credit is due. And it is so amazing seeing students, even if you just say the smallest of word, that was really good, they will then feel as though they've climbed a mountain and they are there, they have conquered it. Okay, so that's, I thought I'd just share with you, that's the sort of principles that I have to consider, and members of my department also have to consider whenever they're planning a lesson in the biology department. And that's in detail for you to have a look at in more, you know, like a little bit closer up. Okay. Now, here's the lesson plan. Like I said to you, this is about the 6th form of a lesson plan I have had to cover in my career and my development as a teacher. And this, you will find, is really quite a lot of open spaces. And this is the first time I've come across this particular type of lesson plan. I'm used to seeing, you know, listing all the different types of student who are, I'd have to list the number of boys and girls in the class. I would have to list the number of students with statements or individual learning plans. I would then have to list all the different types of strategies in terms of literacy and numeracy, as well as listing them in the resources here. I would also then have to list also minute by minute what I would be doing, okay? And then also I would have to list, this is in other schools, not here, but in other schools, I would also have to list what type of learning was going on, what the students would be doing and what the teachers would be doing. But here in this school, they are expecting all of us, because we've got such a lot of experience, to know when, okay, our students are learning and know when or what type of learning is going on. Now, in this particular lesson plan that I'm going to show you today, I've put in a lot more detail just to share with you, okay, what I'm thinking of at any given stage in that lesson. And I'm also sharing with you the timings as well, okay? I wouldn't necessarily do that if I was being observed here, okay, at this school, because it says there, nice little letters up there, a minute by minute plan is not required. So we don't have to do that if we don't want to, but for what we need to do here in this presentation, I've shared that with you so that you can get a sense of what my pace is. Okay, now, at the top of this lesson plan, it's got lots of information in there, okay? It's all sorts of bits and pieces that are there. But I wanted to direct your attention to here. You got your teacher, this is generally what's on the top of every lesson plan, but the topic of the lesson, okay? That's what I'm going to be focusing in on. And I'm going to be quite specific there. And also the focus of my observation. I'm going to be quite specific there as well. And then before I start writing anything, okay, I need to go to the CIE learning objectives, and I need to see what I need to do to introduce my students to enzymes. There is no way any one teacher can cover all of that in one lesson. This is most likely to be 2 to 3 lessons. So let me show you. There's a description of what the enzymes do in terms of, you know, organisms. a description of how enzyme action occurs, and an investigation. That in itself is going to be about 2 to 3 lessons, especially if you're looking at temperature and pH. And so this is the core expectations, which I showed you before, you know, in terms of the assessment. And this is the supplement. So this is extended. Extended is supplement plus the core, okay? And so when you are teaching, you can't just simply go along and say, right, I'm going to do all the core. You can't. You have to mix it up, okay? And so I'm looking at these particular sections here, and I'm also going to have to look at this section here, which is the supplement. And I've got to think about, how do I make that match this? How do I help to make sure that my group of students, because I've got quite well-able students, but I do have to think about their English language proficiency. And so I have to think about what's going to match there to what's going to match here, and complement it and deliver it in such a way that they are able to fully understand what's going on.